It is time for the British people to have their say. It is time for us to settle this question about Britain and Europe.
David Cameron has finally delivered his big speech on Europe. The UK Prime Minister vowed to hold a straight in-out referendum on Britain's future in the EU by 2017, and he wants to negotiate a new settlement with the European Union. But what will the UK's European partners make of Mr Cameron's address?
The real concern, I think, in Berlin is that for ideological reasons, Mr Cameron will go down the route of trying to get really substantive treaty change in the primary law of the European Union. And whereas they're prepared to talk about secondary legislation, maybe that, there is excessive social legislation and so on, when it comes to actually changing the treaty so that, if you like, the British are given a permanent special role in the European Union, then the price is too high.
Ignoring it is not going to make it go away.
Mr Cameron talked of finally settling the question about Britain and Europe, an issue that's divided the Tory party for years. But will a referendum do that?
Right now you have a Tory party that is strongly Eurosceptical and contains a large minority that simply want to take Britain out and will not settle for anything else. So I don't think another referendum will bury this issue once and for all, as he says. Possibly a historic split in the Tory party along the lines that happened in the 1840s over free trade. That might do it, but I'm quite sure the Prime Minister doesn't want that to happen.
We will give the British people a referendum.
The Prime Minister also said the British people have to have their say. But is the issue more about appeasing Eurosceptic backbenchers than appealing to the British electorate?
I certainly think that when he and other members of the Cabinet talk about stronger pressure from the British public than ever to settle the European question and demand change in the way Europe is run, I don't see this. The opinion polls don't suggest this. Other issues, above all the state of the economy and jobs, these sort of things, these are constantly at the top of people's minds. Europe doesn't figure anything like as high as that. So I think they exaggerate when they suggest that they're under pressure from the public. Without any doubt, they are, the government, they are under pressure from their own party.
Mr Cameron wants the vote on Europe to happen by 2017. Critics say uncertainty in the meantime over Britain's position leading up to any referendum could threaten the country's diplomatic and economic prospects, as well as alienating its allies.
I think there's a great deal of worry in the business community in Britain and in the financial community in Britain that this is creating a long period of uncertainty. How can any foreign investor seriously think about investing in Britain if there's a real danger that come 2017, the Brits will vote to leave the European Union? And so it's a very difficult balancing act that David Cameron has actually given himself to deliver.
And there's no guarantee there will be an agreement reached on a new treaty by the date Mr Cameron has set, given he'll have to persuade 26 other governments to go ahead with the changes he wants.
Treaties take a long time to be negotiated and then approved, and I'm not sure that all this would be ready by 2017 as the Prime Minister wants. If it isn't, he will face a very difficult choice. Could he call a referendum on a treaty whose very future, which might not have yet been negotiated, and whose very future might still be in doubt across the rest of Europe? It seems to me he would have to come back to this issue in a way that he's not presently envisaging.
Mr Cameron said on the one hand he understood the appeal of Britain going it alone, but on the other he said the UK must think very carefully about the implications of the withdrawal.
He's definitely sending mixed messages. The beginning of his speech and the end of his speech were like the two outside bits of a sandwich. They were rather pro-European. But the middle of the speech, all about the commitment to a referendum and the changes that Britain wants for a much looser Europe, a much more flexible Europe, a much more multi-speed Europe, all that was pretty solidly Eurosceptic. So the sandwich filling was Eurosceptic, but the bread on the outside looked quite pro-European. The outside bits were for his European partners, and the inside bits were for his backbenchers.
David Cameron's strategy on Europe isn't without risk. His speech was well received by Eurosceptic Tories, but it might not be the vote winner with the British public he would have hoped for. And in the meantime, uncertainty over Britain's position could hurt the UK's relationship with the rest of Europe and hinder investment in the country. Daniel Garahan, Financial Times.